Miami Design Preservation League is happy to welcome you to the 47th Annual Art Deco Weekend Celebration that's celebrating Florida's historic coastal communities. My name is Sandy Sidmore. I'm Secretary of the Board of MDPL and a 25-year volunteer tour guide. For those of you who are not members of MDPL, you can visit our website, mdpl.org, which we invite you to join. Members received free tours, a gift shop discount, and our e-newsletter that lets you know about our free lectures and other activities. More than that, your donations support our ongoing efforts to preserve, promote, and protect in Miami Beach and beyond. This year, we've seen that historic preservation is at a critical juncture and in the state of Florida, and we are working hard to save our coastal communities. So this morning's lecture is the Miami creation myth, how we tell South Florida's stories. So every great civilization from the ancient Greeks to the Egyptians, Sumerians, and Norse had their gods, villains, and heroes. These millennia-old stories of love, violence, honor, and betrayal passed along people's beliefs about themselves to subsequent generations. They were altered through incalculable tellings to better fit changing norms and political ends, but the core messages remain. Andrew Otazo fervently believes that Miami, being a globally unique amalgamation of so many cultures, deserves its own legendary cycle. In his talk, he will read 2 chapters from the Miami Creation Myth, a book he authored that immerses us readers in a universe with its own often absurd deities, rules, and norms, much like the city on which it is based. These modern myths use humor to delve into the wonderful richness as well as endemic privilege and cultural misunderstandings prevalent in one of America's most diverse cities. Specifically, the chapters will cover the Miami-based universe creation and how its different communities were founded and interacted with each other. Before each chapter, Otazo will provide context on the history of Miami that served as the inspiration for the dramatization in this book. So a native Miamian, Andrew Otazo, is a Cuban-American author who wrote a book titled The Miami Creation Myth. Andrew currently runs his own communications firm named ARO Communications, which specializes in public relations, strategy, environmental social governance, executive positioning, and earned media. He previously worked at several international public relations agencies. Andrew served as the executive director of the Cuba Study Group, where he advocated to policymakers on Capitol Hill. He published 17 academic publications that sold over 10,000 copies to the world's top universities, graduate courses, and corporations, while a research associate at the Harvard Business School. Andrew also worked as a researcher at the Harvard Kennedy School, and he helped implement U.S. foreign policy at the State Department. As Mexican President Felipe Calderon's personal assistant, he facilitated the decision-making process of one of the world's highest-level policymakers. Andrew is a native Spanish speaker and proficient in Portuguese. So Andrew removed 23,000 pounds of trash from South Florida's mangrove forest and ocean. He carried a 35-pound bag of mangrove trash, currently in History Miami's permanent collection, the length of the 2019 Miami Marathon, and led a team that hauled a 130-pound trash can throughout the 2020 Miami Marathon. These efforts raised over $30,500 to protect Miami's coastal habitats. Andrew was named to Brickell Magazine's Top 20 Under 40 list, the New Tropics Locals to Know, Local 10th Most Treasured Citizen, Miami's Next Leader, FAES Latino Leader in Politics, and received 2 proclamations from the village of Key Biscayne. Andrew has lectured at the Harvard Law School, Columbia Business School, University of Miami, Cornell, Clemson, Miami-Dade College, and local South Florida middle and high schools. So please welcome Andrew.
Thank you. I did not think you were going to read my bio. So, one final time, and I'm sorry for people who showed up early because you've heard this spiel like 12 times. For those who just arrived and you do not speak Spanish, could you please raise your hand, because a good amount of this is in Spanish and I want you to be able to follow along. Okay, I'm going to lend you a pair of books because there are English footnotes for the Spanish dialogue and narration, and I want you to be able to follow along. I am a Miami native. I was born and raised in the city to Cuban parents. You just heard my bio. I've done probably far too many things, and you might be asking yourself, Andrew, this is Art Deco weekend. What are you doing here? And that's a very good question, which hopefully I'll answer. So Art Deco weekend is about the preservation and celebration of amazing, beautiful historical buildings like the one we're currently in. And what does that mean exactly, preservation? What are you preserving? Are you preserving the individual planks of wood, which I assume are under this carpet? Are you preserving the bricks in this wall, the tiles on the roof? And the answer is obviously no. You're preserving far more than just the sum of individual parts that make up a building. You're preserving the story that building tells, and by extension, the story of the people who built it. Not just what was aesthetically pleasing to them at the time, but the obstacles that they had to overcome, and also what was important to them. What do they want to tell subsequent generations? And as a result, these buildings serve as time capsules that we can interact with directly, and as a result, connect directly with people and communities in the past. And that is not dissimilar to what I try to do in this book. So what I did was mythologize, just as was told in the intro, just like the ancient Greeks or the Egyptians or the Norse did, mythologize the history and the stories of different communities here in Miami. And if I had done that solely from my perspective, which is a Cuban American's perspective, this book would be incomplete. Because though it is an important aspect of Miami's history, it is only one part of it. So what I did was I collaborated with dozens of members of different communities here in South Florida. Everyone from the Seminole tribe of Florida to the Haitian American community, the LGBTQ plus community, undocumented communities, and I inserted their experiences and their stories directly into the book with their guidance, despite not having experienced them. And if you're going to tell these stories, you have to tell them in the languages of these communities. So you all have copies of the books in your hands because there are 11 languages and dialects in this book. Everything from Haitian Creole to Jamaican Patois to Miccosukee to Portuguese, Spanish, you name it, it's in here. And that took 7 years to accomplish. But as a result, I feel like this is a far more complete book that is able to tell these stories. This is one of hopefully a trilogy of books that I'll write. So this is just scene setting. This is setting up what the universe is that I created. And the way the book is structured is that the first half is standalone myths. I'm going to read 2 of those chapters. But it's, for example, how was the universe created? How were the sun, moon, and stars created? How did different communities come to Miami? And then the second half is called the Cafecito Odyssey, where my hero twins, Marta and Coquita, who happen to be named after my grandmothers, had to travel to these different kingdoms or stand-ins for the different communities of Miami in order to be able to put together the constituent parts of Cafecito to wake everybody up in the city. So I use humor, I use satire to try to convey these stories from all these different communities to yourselves so that we can have a dialogue so the subsequent generations, hopefully if this book is still around and not banned, we'll find out, yes. I'm kind of disappointed it hasn't been banned yet. So they can also have that dialogue, just like we're having within this building. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I'm going to read these chapters. At the end, I'll leave some time for questions. If you like the book, you can purchase it. That'd be cool. I'm happy to dedicate it to you. If not, hand it right back in. I'll put it in the box and I'll take it home. No big deal. All right. So let's get started. Dear reader, if you bought this book, thanks for the money. For those who received it as a gift, found it in the trash, or happened to peruse the pages before tossing it in a bonfire, well, thanks for being literate. As preparation for the absurd literary journey I've set before you, it is my moral imperative to leave you with an admonition. I will try to make this succinct, as I am not one for superfluous word use. Rhinoceros. Every great civilization, from the Greeks to the Sumerians, Egyptians, Indus Valley cities, and Han, have their own mythic cycles. These millennia-old stories of love, violence, honor, and betrayal pass the people's beliefs about themselves to subsequent generations. They were altered through incalculable tellings to better fit changing norms and political ends, but the core messages remained. I fervently believe that Miami, being a globally unique amalgamation of so many cultures, deserves its own legendary cycle. The Miami creation myth is a love letter to the city of my birth, the only place I've ever felt I did not need to explain myself to anyone. As such, it is primarily written for Miamians. I've translated its 11 languages and dialects into English because I want it to be accessible to the largest number of South Floridians possible, regardless of background. I guess that means other practitioners of the Bard's tongue can also understand its content, which is just as well. Being a white Cuban American, I could have very easily written this strictly from my personal perspective and populated it with characters who look, speak, and think like me. But that would not befit Miami. The subsequent pages are a full-throated celebration of diversity and multiculturalism. If that bothers you, me cago en ti. Check the footnote. By all means, throw my text in the blaze along with all other works that make you feel uncomfortable. Just make sure to film it. Your grandchildren will be proud. Now that the sapingos are gone, know that this can be a rather silly book, which I think suits Miami perfectly. After all, the city is a glorious, jittering bundle of contradictions, hypocrisies, and enigmas. I wholeheartedly accept and revel in that fact. For those outsiders who attempt to reduce its immeasurable complexity to catchphrases, you're all idiots, and we really don't like you. Having insulted a potentially sizable portion of my readers, I do hope this book shines a light on the good and bad of my city for those not sufficiently fortunate to live within its bounds. Just know that it is a story of Miami, not the story of Miami. There are infinite other narratives with vastly different gods, heroes, and villains. I do not represent my city. I do not even represent my community. I only represent myself. I hope that is good enough. My one wish is that the book makes you laugh and occasionally think. That said, let's get weird. The Miami creation myth. Eons ago, long before the world was created, long before there were people or animals or trees or the immeasurable ocean to the east or the endless Everglades to the west or the great mountain of Tropical Park or Baselitos or Radio Mambi, there was only darkness and cold. And in this darkness slept Pachango the creator on his divine ping pang pung. Pachango shivered in the dark and the cold, and after time unknowable, awoke from his slumber and uttered the first, the holiest of all words in existence. Coño, he cried, sitting up slowly and rubbing his arms for warmth. Que frío. And so, Pachango resolved to fill the universe with heat to expel the cold and light to turn back the darkness. He crossed his legs on the divine ping pang boom and meditated on heat and light until a great burning orange ball of fire we call the sun emerged from the abyss and lit the entirety of the universe. Pero qué cosa más grande, marveled Pachango, gazing upon the majesty of his work. As darkness retreated to the farthest edges of the world, he surveyed the universe and noticed how empty it was. Esto lo voy a resolver, declared Pachango, and he made up his mind to fill the world with the most beautiful new creations one could imagine. Just then, Caridad, Pachango's mother and the most powerful entity in existence, kicked down the celestial door to the universe and proceeded to berate her son. Oye, mijito, yo no soy gerente de la compañía de electricidad. Apaga esa luz o te daré un chancletazo que te partirá la cabeza. Pachango pleaded with his mother about the importance of the monumental task before him. Caridad, however, would have none of it, and Pachango quickly extinguished the sun as she reached for her chancleta. Caridad gave a satisfied grunt, walked through the celestial door of the universe, and slammed it behind her. Greatly demoralized but unshaken in his resolution, Pachango grabbed the divine being Pang Pung, dragged it through the celestial door, and moved to an entirely new universe, where his mother would be unable to bother him about the electricity bill. After reopening the divine being Pang Pung, Pachango turned his attention to creating his new universe. He once more meditated on heat and light until a new, even more glorious golden sun rose above the horizon and illuminated the shapeless void around him. Satisfied with his work, but exhausted from the effort, he laid back and conjured the first cigar and rum and coke to help him relax. He took 3 deep sips from the rum and coke and 3 deep puffs from the cigar, letting out 3 large clouds of smoke. Pachango watched the clouds as they floated over his head. Instead of dissipating, however, they began to swirl and coalesce. He gazed in amazement as they grew arms and legs and heads, and eventually transformed into 3 beautiful siblings, 2 sisters and 1 brother. They looked about the formless universe, the burning sun, and their great creator. Oye, consorte, ¿qué es todo esto? Asked one of the 3. Esto, replied Pachango with a wave of his cigar, es el universo. Bienvenidos, yo soy Pachango, el creador del mundo y su padre. ¿Cuáles son sus nombres? Yo soy Yamilet, said one of the sisters. Yo soy Maris Laces, said the other sister. Yo soy Submarino, said the brother. Ese es un nombre estúpido, replied Pachango. Yo no te voy a llamar Submarino. Tu nombre será Yusiel. ¿Me podría llamar Yusiel el Submarino? Asked the brother. Llámate cualquier estupidez que quieras, responded Pachango. El resto del universo te llamará Yusiel. Pachango sat his children on the divine being Pang Pung and explained how he wished to fill the universe with diverse and beautiful wonders. Yamilet, Marislaces, and Yusiel grew very excited and begged their father to allow them to assist in this great endeavor. Pachango smiled at their enthusiasm and acquiesced. He divided the universe into 3 great realms, granting 1 to each of the siblings to create and rule as they wished. Yamilet, being the most spirited and exuberant of the 3, rose high above her family and claimed the sky as her own. She shook her head in disapproval as she looked at the drabness of her new domain. Using a mattress feather from the divine being Pang Pung, she painted the sky a magnificent shade of bright blue. She then blew upon an ice cube from Pachango's rum and coke, forming the clouds while her breath became the wind. Satisfied with her work, Yamilet descended back onto the divine being Pang Pung to the praise of Pachango, Yusiel, and Maris Laces. Yusiel then took another ice cube from his father's glass. He pressed it tightly in both hands, melting it and forming the great eastern ocean. The sweat of his exertion mixed with the water, turning it salty. Marislaces, being more patient than her hurried brother, allowed a 3rd ice cube to melt in the sun. This created the freshwater expanse to our west that we call the Everglades. She used un hilo from the divine being Pang Pung to weave the mangroves, sawgrass, and cypress that populate that massive, slow-moving river. Satisfied, the 3 siblings reclined on the divine being Pang Pung and congratulated each other on their work. Unbeknownst to Pachango, a stray puff of smoke from his cigar had also coalesced to form a new, invisible entity whose machinations would forever mar the harmony that existed at the beginning of the universe. His name was HP, the god of chisme. HP, though not categorically opposed to order, hated stagnation, and above all, boredom. He therefore never projected a concrete physical representation of himself, like his brother and sisters, but preferred to remain a nebulous cloud that could instantly travel to all corners of the world to record secrets and spread half-truths. The only way to discern his presence was by the strong smell of tobacco, which always followed him. HP looked at the new world and yawned loudly. "Qué aburrido," he said to himself. Tres reinados estáticos, el cielo, el mar y el pantano, donde nada cambia nunca. Bueno, este huevo quiere sal y yo soy el salero. HP approached the divine Ping Pang Pung, which sat at the nexus where all three realms met. Marislaces, Uciel, and Yamilet, oblivious to his existence and unused to his smell, against which they would forever be on their guard, did not notice when he whispered in their ears. Tus hermanos quieren reclamar el Ping Pang Pung divino, muttered HP. Ellos son avariciosos. Quieren que tu padre lo rechace. Quieren conquistar tu reinado. Ten cuidado. Prepárate para la pelea que ya comenzó. Marislaces, Uciel, and Yamilet eyed each other suspiciously and excused themselves from the divine Ping Pang Pung to continue working on their respective kingdoms. Instead, however, they bred and marshaled armies to battle their siblings. Marislaces was by far the most patient of the three. She mixed mud and cypress bark to create fearsome alligators and crocodiles. She made poisonous snakes of all sizes from straightened mangrove roots. Excess thread from the divine Ping Pang Pung was used to spawn hordes of spiders that wove impenetrable webs stronger than steel. With her fortifications complete, Marislaces simply waited for her enemies to entangle and entrap themselves within her citadel. Yamilet agitated and spun the wind into great swirling hurricanes and sent them crashing across the ocean and into the Everglades. Uciel, meanwhile, dove to the bottom of the sea, dredging mud from the darkest recesses of its depths, and shaped an endless fleet of bacalao and sent it streaming into the Everglades. He also raised mountainous frothing waves upon the previously glass-still surface of the ocean to drown Yamilet's celestial domain. In retaliation, Yamilet rent the skies with lightning, frying the bacalao, and created the world's first croquetas, which floated to the surface of the ocean and filled the battlefield with an exquisite aroma. This instantly froze all hostilities. ¡No! Exclaimed Yamilet. Tremenda jama. Eso huele delicioso. Dímelo cantando, added Marislaces. Oye, brother, ¿nos dejas compartir de esta delicadeza? Aprovecha, hermana, mumbled Uciel between fistfuls of croquetas. Dale, antes que se pongan frías. The three siblings forgot their animosity and joined each other for a hearty meal. The waves were calmed, the wind died down, and all returned to its prior harmony. Needless to say, this irked HP to no end. He floated in perfect silence to where the sisters and brother enjoyed their croquetas and set about spreading new, more devastating rumors. Yamilet y Uciel dicen que tus cejas fueron arregladas por una ciega, said HP to Marislaces. Marislaces y Yamilet creen que tú eres hijo del lechero, said HP to Uciel. Uciel y Marislaces piensan que tú tienes una cara de culo, said HP to Yamilet. Mis cejas están perfectas, cried Marislaces. Yo no soy hijo de lechero, exclaimed Uciel. Yo no tengo una cara de culo, yelled Yamilet. And so, the croquetas were dropped, and the battle resumed. Uciel created far deadlier fleets of bull, great white, hammerhead, and mako sharks, sting and eagle rays, barracuda, whales, dolphins, crabs, and lobsters, and sent them streaming into the Everglades. Yamilet used feathers taken from the divine Ping Pang Pung to fashion huge birds, far larger than their contemporary counterparts, to devour Uciel's monsters. These included gigantic brown pelicans that could swallow whales whole, egrets that stalked the deepest parts of the ocean without wetting their knees, and ospreys whose wingspans darkened the sun. Marislaces ordered her alligators and crocodiles to tear apart Uciel's predators once they were entangled among the spiderwebs and mangrove roots, while swarms of mosquitoes drained any birds rash enough to fly over or wade into her domain. Bajango watched in horror as his once peaceful world was transformed into a raging battleground. He cried out to his children to stop their fighting, but the cacophonous din of crashing waves, howling wind, screeching birds, and roaring monsters drowned out his voice. In desperation, he pleaded for the intercession of the only power in the universe that could stop the violence. The celestial door to the universe flew open with a kick that shook the very foundations of existence. Sio! Thundered Caridad. The waves and wind died in an instant. Every one of the millions of creatures locked in battle immediately froze in primordial dread. Caridad flung her chancleta, that most feared and powerful of weapons, 3 times through the air. Ignoring all laws of physics and common sense, it chased the warring gods around corners, through walls, and into their most secret hiding places. 3 times it hit its marks on the behinds of each of the 3 siblings, and 3 times it returned to Caridad's hand. Niños malcriados, cried Caridad as she placed the chancleta back on her foot. Pórtense bien o les daré un soplamocos tan duro que los sentirán hasta sus bisnietos. She walked through the celestial door of the universe, slamming it behind her with a resounding boom that echoed for a dozen years. With his children subdued, Pachango realized he needed to separate them to head off future conflict. He drew deeply from his cigar and let out a large cloud of smoke, which coalesced to form Junior, the god of the earth. Separa tus hermanos para que ya acaben con sus comemierderías, commanded Pachango. Junior nodded to his father and lifted both arms high above his head, raising Miami-Dade County and the Keys from deep below the ocean floor and separating the realms of sky, Everglades, and sea. Terrified that the upstart god of the earth would create an impenetrable barrier between Marislesis, Yamilet, and Uciel and put an end to his fun, HP rushed to Junior's side. "¡Qué fo!" he whispered. "Y qué grajo más malo! Oye, compadre, te lavaste las axilas esta mañana." Junior lowered his arms in embarrassment, stopping South Florida's ascent only 6 feet above the ocean. This forever allowed Yamislet's hurricanes to scour across the land on their way to the Everglades. Likewise, Uciel would seek to wear down the barrier between himself and Marislesis through the tides and flooding that Miami would experience until it eventually succumbed to the eternal enmity of the gods. Tepe's mischief, however, and captured him in his glass of rum and coke. "Niño odioso," he yelled at the god of Chisme. "Yo vi lo que hiciste. Todo esto es su culpa. Yo sé que destruiste la armonía del universo. Junior, construye un palacio adecuado para tu hermano." Following his father's command, Junior raised Mount Trashmore, a towering peak in southern Miami-Dade made entirely of garbage, where Achebe was forced to take up residence. Junior then created Mount Tropical Park, the holiest of all landmarks in Miami. Pachango rose high above the clouds, surmounting miles of sheer cliffs and rock walls, placed his divine Ping Pang Pung at the summit of that blessed mountain, and summoned his errant children to answer for their indiscretions. Greatly saddened by their missteps, but resolute in his decision, he banished each of the 3 gods to 3 great houses, which he placed at the 3 farthest ends of the universe. Uciel was sent far over the eastern ocean to reside in Casa al Carajo. Marislesis was sent far to the west over the Everglades to reside in Casa Culo. Lastly, Yamilet was sent over the great, interminably wide chasm that marked the northern border of Miami to Casa Pinga. Half-crazed sages of later epochs would claim that Yamilet's abode actually resided in the mythical land of Broward, where up was down, cats barked, humans were born with 3 heads, and Cafecito was nowhere to be found. But their divinations would remain untested for many, many more years. Exhausted and demoralized by his children's misconduct, Pachango laid upon the divine Ping Pang Pung. He called Junior to his side, instructed him on the proper order of the world, and named the god of the earth as his steward. Pachango then yawned loudly, placed his cigar and rum and coke by his side, and drifted into a deep sleep. He would not awaken from his slumber until the end of times, though he resolved to always guide his precious creations from his dreams. So, that's the first chapter. We have 20 minutes left. I know that some of you are pressed for time, And I don't want to get into the next chapter, which is how all the different communities come to Miami. If that means I'll make you late to your next lecture or appointment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up for any audience questions you might have.
What has been the reaction of your family? Grandmothers and siblings and things.
Well, my parents don't understand what the hell I wrote. But it was a wonderful experience, writing this book, because I got to connect with them at a very much deeper level, I think, than I had in the past, because I would sit down with them and essentially just ask them, to download their entire life's worth of Cuban phrases and idiosyncrasies into this book. So I would spend hours with them, and that was very gratifying. But actually, my family has a bunch of writers. My mother is a writer. My sister is a food journalist, and she's actually a very good writer as well. But it has been interesting, because being the son of immigrants, you're supposed to be a doctor or a lawyer or maybe an engineer, maybe an architect, probably not. So they don't understand what in the world I'm doing, but they're still just like, they're just supportive, even though they don't get it. It's very sweet. Yes.
Is there a real myth that is based on?
It's a bunch of different myths. Yeah. So you're an anthropologist. So we got to speak a little bit before the book reading. There are all sorts of different, I guess, inspirations for this mythic cycle. So, you have throughout mythology, you have the creation of prior worlds or prior universes where things were idyllic or things were just different, whether that's, Apache mythology or Taino or, Sumerian, the world of the wooden men or the world of the stone men that came before. But the thing about storytelling and the thing about mythology is that if you live in a utopia, that means that everything is static. And if everything is static, there's no story. And therefore there's nothing to tell. Oh, everything was perfect. It's like you have a painting. It's beautiful. Great. But nothing ever happens and nothing ever will happen because it's perfect. So Achepe comes into this universe, and he is the trickster god, like Loki or like any other, like every single mythology has a trickster god who's not evil, but he is interested in storytelling. He's interested in actually making something happen. So without him, there would be no book. It would just be, there was an awesome world. It was perfect. And that's all you need to know about it. But yeah, so, I used everything from, Greek mythology to like all these native, traditions to the Bible as well. There's plenty of biblical references in there as well. Yep. Yes.
You mentioned it being a planned trilogy.
Oh, wow. You're meant for each other.
Where do you see it going in the course of the trilogy?
That's an excellent question. I'm very glad you asked that. So the first book, this one, is all about universe building. What are the rules of the universe? Who inhabits this universe and how do they interact with each other? The second book is going to be much more about diving deeper into the different problems and idiosyncrasies that make up Miami. So, I'll be able to really like focus in on those particular stories. And the third book, going back to mythic cycles, how does every mythic cycle end? There's an apocalypse. And guess how the apocalypse is gonna come to Miami? It's gonna be climate change. There was very, very, very observant. Yes, there was foreshadowing about that in the first chapter. Yes, so that is the plan. But we have I have a whole team behind me. It's not just me. So I've been doing this for 7 years now. I have a director. I have a whole, literally 25 cast, character actors or voice actors that are acting in the audiobook that we plan on publishing, hopefully in the next coming months. And then from there, we're going to, hopefully turn it into an animated TV series. So, yeah.
It felt like
Yeah, I'm
it to be animated and some subtitles for the, you know.
Yes, that's exactly the idea. So, October of last year. So there's a lot of plans for this book. In October of last year, I won an award. Look at that. It's called the International Latino Book Award, which means I'm an international Latino, and they gave me a medal for it. So using that, as an excuse, I went to LA with my director, and we had a bunch of meetings, and we're in development now for the animated TV series. Yes.
How do we sign up to hear about all these other things that are going on with you?
Oh, I love that. Well, to plug all my projects, you can do it in any. There are a bunch of different ways. You can go to miamicreationmyth.com, and there's a sign up. There's a little pop-up that pops up. It's, this guy in the Speedo pops up, and, you can put in your email, and there's a weekly newsletter that goes out. You can follow me on Instagram at Miami Creation Myth, or Facebook, same thing. And so Miami Creation Myth, oh my God, it has been a very, very long journey. So, basically I had to build my own base of my own fan base in Miami. And in order to do that, 7 years ago, I started publishing highly viral, shareable content, memes, in other words. So what started off as Andrew wants to write a book, turned into this monster where we have probably, I think we're at like 40,000 followers across platforms. And we have the weekly newsletter that goes out, and I have these live readings, and we have the animated TV series, and all this massive project that has just turned into a gigantic monster.
How do you have time to run your PR business?
That's a very good question. I'm doing this on the weekend. Yeah, I don't sleep very much. So this week alone, I led 2 different cleanups that removed 2,000 pounds of trash from Sands Key down to the Keys. And yesterday I was in Bearcut Preserve in Key Biscayne. Today I'm doing this. On Thursday I'll be in Zoo Miami doing the same thing, talking about preservation, talking about the Miami Creation Myth. And yeah, I have my clients that I work with doing public relations and communications work. So I'm very tired. Yes.
How was the writing this book and of course interviewing with the different communities change your personal relationships?
Amazing question. This has been, I wouldn't change this for the world, because I had grown up in Miami, right? Being Cuban American, the thing about Miami is that it's the PR around the city is that it is this wonderfully diverse city. It is 70% Latino, 18% Black, and you grow up in this milieu of just all these different cultures. But the fact of the matter is that when you grow up in one of these cultures, you basically stay in that culture. So Miami is not a melting pot so much as a salad bowl. So you can spend your entire life, literally your entire life in Miami, never leave the city, and never have a meaningful interaction with someone from another community. So before I written this book, I'd never met a member of the Seminole tribe of Florida. And I actually collaborated. So there were several different people, but one of the people that I collaborated with on the longest chapter in the book, which is about the Everglades, which is about the history of the Seminole, her name is Cheyenne Kippenberger. And she's a pageant queen. She won Miss Seminole USA and Miss Indian World, but she's brilliant. And she took a look at the first draft that I wrote for this chapter, and she said, "That's cute. It's all wrong." And I literally deleted that entire chapter, and she helped me rewrite it. Same thing with the Haitian American community. There's Haitian Creole dialogue in this book. I don't speak Haitian Creole. So I had to have several different Haitian American friends look at it and make sure that that was right. The Jamaican patois in this book, likewise. And not just that, but all the dialogue. So I wanted to represent all these different cultures. There are many cultures that I this is on me that I didn't put into this book, like Colombian, Venezuelan, they're going to be in the subsequent books. But it forced me to go outside of my immediate circle and to interact, not just interact, but like learn from and truly empathize with all these different experiences that I haven't had. And I wouldn't change that for anything. If no one had bought this book, if nothing had come of it, like just for me personally, it's been like the most gratifying experience I could have. Yes. I'll give it to you and then you. Go ahead. Yes.
Other than the obvious preserving the mythos, the stories for potentially future generations, the bonfires,
Yeah.
what impact do you, in your ideal, like culmination or like subsequent iteration this project when you started, what impact do you want it to have on whether it's the city, the people in the city, or the world?
So there's a couple of different ones. So internally within Miami, when a Miamian picks up this book, I want them to read through it, maybe occasionally chuckle and go, all right, he didn't screw that up. I want different members of these different communities to be able to see their experiences reflected in a genuine manner. Because living in Miami, we don't get to tell our stories very often. Other people tell our stories. Miami Vice or Scarface. And, as a Cuban American, that's not my life. All right. I'm not doing mountains of cocaine and then shooting off, a grenade launcher. Most days. So internally, I want them not just to see their experiences reflected, but also to be able to learn about all these different communities that also reside in the city. I'm a tongue-in-cheek Miami chauvinist in that I understand like all of our shortcomings. But I am I love all the different communities in this city. Truly, I truly do. And I want other Miamians who, for example, might be, part of different Latino communities or part of other communities to really have an appreciation for their neighbors that they don't really talk to because that's not something we do. Externally, I want to tell our story. I want to tell a story that actually isn't just meant to fetishize Miami. That isn't packaged so that, outsiders consume our narratives and, just see us as some crazy exotic banana republic, which we kind of are, but, there's much more nuance to it. Okay. And yourself?
One was a comment that I hadn't thought of. So his question, was like, and I don't know if I pronounced the name correctly, but Hyacinth.
Oh, Hyacinth. Yeah, he's great.
I mean, with humor, he brings up very important environmental topics.
Right.
I realize this is a little more unique to Miami Beach, but I haven't heard you mention Yiddish or Jewish.
There's Hebrew. There's Hebrew, not Yiddish, but there's an entire section of the Cafecito Odyssey that's dedicated to Miami Beach, where the hero twins go and they have this interaction. Yes, that is another very important community up here. Absolutely, it is in there. It's in there. I promise. Yes. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
It's just I can't play long time living in Miami something I am, but a couple of things in here.
Exactly. Yes. Without traffic, it's 35 minutes away. But it's just culturally and just like mentally, it's like, oh, I'm going to America. Like, I need to get my passport. Yeah, no, it's just, it's not that different. It really is. I'm in Broward quite a bit. It does, but when you cross that county border, something happens where like, you're just like, oh, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And also like, you're up there and you're like, oh, not everyone is trying to kill me on the roads. So that's nice. And then you cross, you pass the stadium on the way back down south and immediately like 7 different BMWs try to like run you off the road. And you're like, oh, I'm home again.
Okay, good.
Yes. Yes, you have another one?
Maybe too is like at work, we'll be working, and then someone said, "Oh, make coffee," like little espresso cup. Everybody drops everything.
Yeah,
They go get the, like water cooler.
exactly. Right.
Like how they cook everything, they just enjoy the food.
That my father had his own construction company, and when people would come in to have meetings with him, he would literally kick them out if they didn't bring cafecito. Like it's like this communal expectation that if you go to visit someone, you bring cafecito. And that there's literally half the book dedicated to this weird, extremely sugary and caffeinated drink that we're obsessed with here. And, I have a friend who moved down here recently, and, he, thinking he was still in America, he ordered Cuban coffee, and then he was like, "Oh, can you bring me extra sugar?" And the waitress was like, "Okay, sure, here you go." And the man didn't sleep for like the next 24 hours. Yes.
Speaking of, you mentioned a friend that just moved here. Do you capture like the outsider perspective? Because, I guess since 2020, there's no one moving in everywhere else. Is there like no way that you want to get like kind of people that are experiencing it for the first time?
I more lampoon it. So as I said, Miami is a salad bowl. All these different communities don't really interact too much with each other, but also, that I call them the expat community. Recent arrivals who come down here for professional reasons. That I love making fun of the tech sector. But it's not just tech. It could be any of the professional industries. It could be finance, or it could be, consulting, or anything, or accounting. And there's a general, pattern where they'll stick to Wynwood or Edgewater or Brickell, and they stay there and they never go out west. And I get it, because we're not the friendliest city. And it can be very, very difficult to penetrate, into a native Miami circles, especially because for many other reasons, but we also literally speak different languages. So, if I'm around the people that I grew up in, there's a lot of Spanish going on. A lot of Spanish. Or you go to Little Haiti, you can hear a lot of Creole. So that can be very difficult for recent arrivals. So I wrote this book originally. This book started as a short story, the first chapter, which you all just heard. And I wrote that in 2017. And I submitted it to this literary journal called Acentos Review, which is the most prestigious Latino literary journal in the United States. And to my, I literally, when I got the email in my bedroom at night with the lights off, I didn't stop laughing for half an hour when they told me that they had accepted it, because this is a very, very silly, first chapter. And I'm going to be next to like very, very serious poets writing about very serious things. So they accepted it, they published it. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe I can do something with this. So I went to my director friend, who's my creative partner, and I said, hey, do you want to make a short film out of this? And he said, absolutely not, because there's no money in that. But if you write an entire book, maybe we can make an animated TV series, which was just his way of telling me to get out, essentially. And I was like, okay. So I wrote the book. And now he's stuck with me. So that was back before this big wave of recent arrivals came here, with Francis Suarez asking people, putting up billboards asking how he can help, rather than, helping his constituents. So the subsequent books, I'm constantly writing, short stories and articles, sort of like Onion-esque, delving into these topics, which if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get. But I didn't really delve into it in this book in particular. Yes.
Do you collaborate with organizations like Aspen Klein?
Oh, yes. Oh, very much so. When it comes to my conservation work, I collaborate with all manner of different organizations. Just this week, I collaborated with a nonprofit called Clean This Beach Up, to clean up Sands Key. But I've worked with the Frost Museum of Science, the Girl Scouts, with local schools. Yeah, all the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm like, again, I don't just clean up like the the mangroves, but I'm out in the Everglades. And wherever there's trash, there's also me. Yes, absolutely. Oh, great. Okay. So if you would like to buy the book, I'm happy to sell it to you